They laughed when I showed up alone. The sound wasn't a single burst of mockery, but a slow, judgmental ripple that started with my cousin Samantha, was picked up by her mother, Aunt Carol, and then spread like a contagion through the entire extended family gathered on the manicured lawns of Uncle George's estate. It was the annual Harrington family reunion, an event that felt less like a celebration of kinship and more like a carefully orchestrated exhibition of wealth and achievement. I stood near the edge of the sprawling buffet table, a plate of untouched canapés in hand, dressed in a simple navy blue silk dress that was elegant but utterly lacked the flash of my relatives' designer ensembles. My name is Evelyn Cross, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a lead architect specializing in sustainable, low-impact housing developments. It's a niche I love, focused on engineering efficiency, material ethics, and building homes that serve the planet as much as they serve their occupants. The pay is respectable, but it certainly doesn't afford the sprawling luxury or ostentatious displays of status that define the Harrington clan. I live in a modern, light-filled condo near the city's greenbelt, a world away from the gilded cages my cousins inhabit. According to my family, this makes me a failure, a quiet spinster, who chose environmental idealism over financial reality, and who, most unforgivably, remained single. The core conflict of my life, as defined by the Harringtons, was my lack of a suitable male partner. Every holiday, every birthday, and especially every reunion, centered around a meticulous inventory of my life's perceived deficits, all of which circled back to my marital status. It didn't matter that I had just successfully launched a 50-unit zero-energy housing project that was earning national acclaim. It mattered that I had arrived alone. "Oh, Evelyn, darling, still flying solo?" Samantha asked, gliding over to me with her husband, Mark, trailing behind her like an expensive shadow. Samantha was 33, a former sorority sister who had seamlessly transitioned into a life of country club luncheons and high-end charity organizing, the latter of which provided a crucial social facade for the family. Mark, a successful corporate lobbyist, gave me a look of bored pity. "Hello, Samantha." "Mark," I replied, my voice calm despite the familiar sting. "I prefer to call it professionally focused. My latest project is demanding a lot of time." Aunt Carol, Samantha's mother and the reigning matriarch of judgment, joined the conversation, armed with a glass of Prosecco and a lethal smile. Professionally focused translates to personally deficient, honey. "You know, your father keeps telling me what a good girl you are. So smart with your little buildings. But darling, a woman your age needs stability. And a man. Look at Samantha. She runs the entire annual gala for the Heritage Arts Foundation, married to Mark, with 2 beautiful children. That's success, Evelyn. Not living like a bright, but ultimately lonely, eccentric." The phrase lonely eccentric was a deliberate hit, the accumulated poison of decades. Growing up, Samantha had received effusive praise for every average report card and every overly staged family photo, while my quiet accomplishments, winning science fairs, receiving early university acceptances, were brushed aside. My parents, who were standing nearby pretending not to listen, always preferred to bask in the reflected glory of Uncle George's family, never mine. Their love was conditional, dependent on me fitting into the perfect conservative narrative they craved. When I chose architecture over their preferred business law and sustainable design over corporate skyscrapers, I became the family's chronic disappointment. This year's reunion felt particularly charged. The Harringtons were hosting the event at Uncle George's sprawling estate, and the chatter was dominated by one subject: the $25 million donation made by a mysterious, anonymous benefactor to the Heritage Arts Foundation, the very charity Samantha worked for, and that provided the family with immense local prestige. Samantha had taken full credit for securing the funds, implying she had deep personal ties to the anonymous billionaire. Elias Thorne, a notoriously private tech mogul whose company, Thorne Industries, was rapidly buying up local real estate. The irony was suffocating. Samantha's social standing was built on a lie she couldn't afford to let me contradict. I had come to the reunion with a secret, a profound one that transcended mere employment. I had, for the past 6 months, been working on a highly confidential project for Elias Thorne. My specialty in energy-efficient design was crucial to his vision for a massive, sustainable tech campus. Through endless late-night meetings, intense design reviews, and shared meals over CAD drawings, Elias and I had developed a powerful, undeniable connection. He was reserved, brilliant, and crucially, he saw my ambition, intelligence, and purpose as assets, not flaws. 2 weeks ago, in the quiet of my new, perfectly designed prototype home, which he had commissioned and then bought for me, he had asked me to be his partner in life, not just in business. I was secretly engaged to the very billionaire my cousin was pretending to know. I had arrived alone because Elias was supposed to be in Geneva. We had agreed that our engagement would remain private until the campus project was public, protecting both my career and his intense privacy. But standing there, listening to Aunt Carol's cruel assessment of my life, seeing the glittering disdain in Samantha's eyes, I felt a dangerous recklessness. "Samantha, that's quite the diamond," I said, diverting the conversation, hoping to distract them. "Oh, this old thing?" Samantha purred, deliberately flashing the huge, tasteless rock. "Mark bought it for me when I secured the $25 million donation. We're celebrating my success in bringing the Heritage Foundation into the big leagues." Aunt Carol leaned in conspiratorially. "She's talking about our mysterious benefactor, Elias Thorne. The man is a legend, darling. Samantha is one of the few people who has his private ear. She's indispensable to the foundation now, and by extension, Mark is crucial to his local investments. It's all about connections, Evelyn, something you wouldn't understand with your little nonprofit accounting." That was the line that snapped the last thread of my composure. I didn't just consult for nonprofits. I specialized in optimizing their financial structures to maximize impact. A skill born of genuine passion, not desperation. "Actually, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice quiet but piercing the polite hubbub around us, "I understand quite well. It takes considerable time and effort to structure an anonymous, multi-million-dollar donation to ensure maximum tax efficiency and minimal public exposure, while simultaneously setting up the architectural framework for the benefactor's new private estate. All things my actual work requires." Samantha's smile evaporated. "What on earth are you rambling about, Evelyn? Do you have a headache from that cheap wine? Since when do you handle multi-million-dollar deals? You design glorified sheds for hippies?" Mark actually laughed. "She's lying again, Sam. Remember last year she claimed she was dating a polo player? She just wants to feel important." "It's sad. A polo player?" Aunt Carol shrieked, clearly delighted at the new ammunition. "Evelyn, are you so lonely that you have to invent men? You need to accept your reality, darling. It's okay to be alone, but don't bring shame to the family with these ridiculous fictions." The words felt like physical blows. The surrounding relatives, sensing a juicy escalation, began to gather closer, grinning. This was the moment of maximum emotional degradation. My family was laughing at me, not just for being single, but for being a perceived liar and failure. I looked into Samantha's face and saw pure, vicious malice. She relished my embarrassment. I knew I had to retreat before I broke down. "Excuse me?" I whispered, turning away and heading towards the secluded stone patio at the edge of the gardens. The air felt thick and suffocating. I sank onto a garden bench, my head bowed, fighting the overwhelming urge to cry. "You survived them, Evelyn. You survived them." I repeated the mantra my inner strength had whispered for years, but the sheer weight of their collective contempt was debilitating. Suddenly, a massive, sleek black SUV, not the kind of car a regular guest would drive, pulled silently into the gravel driveway. It looked out of place among the usual assortment of luxury sedans. The family immediately fell silent, their collective gaze shifting from my humiliation to the new arrival. Uncle George himself rushed forward, dusting off his jacket. "Who is that?" "That's not a local car," Aunt Carol whispered, her tone suddenly hushed and reverent. "Mark, go check. That must be a major client for George." I looked up, following their gaze. The passenger door opened and a man emerged. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, with the kind of reserved, powerful presence that demanded attention without seeking it. It was Elias Thorne. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be 4,000 miles away. The Harringtons, recognizing the quality of the suit, the silent efficiency of the driver, and the sheer authority of his bearing, instantly assumed he was a VIP guest or a potential investor for Uncle George's latest venture. Uncle George intercepted Elias mid-stride, his hand outstretched with a practiced, ingratiating smile. "Mr. Thorne, what an unexpected pleasure. I'm George Harrington, the host. We met briefly at the Commerce Gala last spring. Welcome. Welcome to our family reunion." Uncle George was practically vibrating with excitement, seeing dollar signs. Elias, however, barely glanced at Uncle George's outstretched hand. He gave a curt, cool nod, his striking blue eyes scanning the crowd with an unnerving intensity. "Mr. Harrington, I apologize for the intrusion. I'm afraid I'm not here for a social call. I'm here for one person." The entire family froze, their collective breath held tight. Aunt Carol elbowed Samantha, urging her to step forward, believing Elias must be looking for the acclaimed foundation gala organizer. Samantha, recovering her composure, offered her most dazzling professional smile. "Mr. Thorne, I'm Samantha Harrington. I handle the Heritage Arts Foundation Gala. I've been working tirelessly on the budget for the new gallery wing. I believe we have mutual interests," she began, moving forward with an air of practiced authority. Elias stopped, his head turning slightly toward Samantha. He didn't smile. He looked at her as if she were a piece of misplaced furniture. "I am aware of your foundation work, Ms. Harrington," he said flatly. Then, with a movement that was both dismissive and utterly focused, he bypassed Samantha and Aunt Carol entirely. He walked past the stunned group, his path leading him straight through the heart of the reunion, past the untouched buffet, past the frozen faces, until he reached the secluded stone patio in the garden. He stopped directly in front of me. I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs, the exhaustion and humiliation replaced by pure, blinding shock. Elias looked at me, the lonely eccentric in the simple silk dress. His intense gaze softened instantly, replacing the cold corporate mask with a look of profound, tender warmth that was only ever reserved for me. "Evelyn," he said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate register that was loud enough for the paralyzed family to hear every syllable. "I'm sorry I missed our flight to Geneva. The board meeting ended an hour early, and when I saw your last text, I realized I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't let you face this alone." He reached into the inner pocket of his charcoal suit jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He simply opened the box, revealing the most stunning emerald-cut diamond ring I had ever seen. Elegant, understated, yet fiercely beautiful. "My apologies for the lack of privacy," he continued, looking only at me, completely ignoring the now gaping family frozen 10 yards away. "I believe I promised you this moment would be in our prototype home. But after hearing what your family said about your worth and your dedication, I felt it was necessary to confirm, in the presence of those who doubt you, that you are the most valuable person in my world. Will you marry me, Evelyn? Marry me, and finally put an end to all this nonsense." Tears streamed down my face, but they were tears of shock, vindication, and overwhelming love. The world tilted and snapped into perfect focus. I knew exactly what he was doing, and why he had broken our rule of privacy. He had arrived not just as a partner, but as a protective force, delivering the final, irrefutable twist. "Yes," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Elias, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. He didn't kiss me immediately. Instead, he turned his head and addressed the stunned, silent Harringtons. "I believe you were just introduced to my fiancé," Elias stated, his voice now crisp, professional, and utterly dismissive of their entire existence. "Evelyn is my partner in everything. The housing project she designed is the blueprint for my new global campus initiative. Her intelligence is the foundation of my next decade of investment." Aunt Carol finally found her voice, a strangled, panicked sound. But you said she was dating a polo player, and she's an architect. We thought she was alone." Elias looked directly at Aunt Carol, his expression chillingly severe. "Evelyn is never alone. She chose to be private. And as for her career," he continued, his gaze sweeping over the whole paralyzed group, "she designs structures that will last for centuries and improve the planet. A work of immeasurable value, unlike the value system I've just witnessed, which appears to be built entirely on outdated social metrics and casual cruelty. The humiliation they had inflicted on me minutes earlier was now multiplied and returned to them tenfold, amplified by the presence of a silent billionaire they desperately needed to impress." Uncle George stumbled forward, trying desperately to recover. "Mr. Thorne, sir, we apologize. A misunderstanding. A simple joke. We meant no offense. Amelia is family. We love her. We're so proud." Elias held up a hand, silencing him instantly. "You claimed my fiancé was lying about her worth and ridiculed her life choices. That is not love, Mr. Harrington. That is exploitation. He then delivered the final devastating blow, tying my purpose to his power. And since the subject of value has been brought up, let's discuss the Heritage Arts Foundation, Ms. Harrington. The organization you claim to be indispensable to. I am the anonymous donor who recently provided the $25 million endowment, and I am here to announce a major change in leadership. Samantha's face went white. Her husband Mark's eyes bulged. I was deeply impressed by the foundation's work with the local community, Elias stated, his voice a hammer of authority, but less impressed by the leadership's focus on social vanity projects, rather than true outreach. As of this morning, all operational leadership for the foundation will be transferred to the Vance Foundation for Disruptive Altruism, which is now overseeing all my philanthropic activities. He paused, delivering the final, crushing sentence. The new foundation director, responsible for managing the entirety of the $25 million endowment and all future grants, will be my fiancé, Evelyn Cross. The silence returned, but this time it was a silence of total, irreversible catastrophe. Samantha and Aunt Carol were not just humiliated. Their entire local identity, built on the false status of the foundation, had been professionally terminated by the very man they were desperate to impress. The transfer of the foundation leadership to me, the woman they deemed too poor and eccentric, was the ultimate act of poetic justice. Elias finally turned back to me. The entire drama concluded. He gave me a single private smile, then gently took my hand, placing it in the crook of his arm. Let's go, Evelyn. We have a private jet and a bottle of proper champagne waiting in Geneva. I believe a global CEO deserves a moment of quiet before her first board meeting. We walked back through the crowd. This time no one laughed. No one spoke. The relatives scattered, their heads bowed, unable to meet my eyes. Samantha stood frozen next to her husband, Mark, who was frantically pulling out his phone, likely realizing the foundation connection was crucial to his own lobbying clients. He was looking at his wife not with love, but with cold financial resentment. My father took a shaky step forward, a final desperate attempt. Amelia, please, don't do this. The foundation. Clara worked so hard. I didn't slow my pace. Clara worked hard on the gala, Dad, I said over my shoulder. I worked hard on the mission. Elias understands the difference, and that's why I'm walking away with him, and the entire foundation. The chauffeur held the sedan door open. Elias helped me in, then slid in beside me. As the car pulled away, I looked back one last time. Uncle George was slumped against a pillar, his networking efforts destroyed. My mother was being consoled by Aunt Carol, both of them sobbing, their faces streaked with mascara and ruined pride. The flight to Geneva was the most serene, cathartic experience of my life. Elias poured a glass of champagne. Not the cheap wine I had brought, but a vintage far beyond my family's typical pretenses, and handed it to me. Are you all right, my love? He asked, his voice genuinely concerned. I looked down at the spectacular emerald-cut diamond on my finger. It felt heavy, but not with obligation, heavy with the weight of the new reality I had just claimed. I'm better than all right, I said, taking a slow, steady sip of the champagne. I'm free. But Elias, you didn't have to break your own rule. You didn't have to risk your privacy in that elaborate entrance. He reached across and gently cupped my cheek. Yes, I did. I saw your text, Evelyn. The one that simply said, I'm out. It's done. I'm coming home. I knew that meant you were at your limit. I realized that a professional announcement later wouldn't erase 2 decades of that cruelty. You needed more than a board resolution. You needed a decisive public declaration of your worth, delivered by someone whose status they couldn't deny. They judged you for your appearance and your aloneness. I needed to show them you are the highest prize. He leaned in, his eyes shining, and besides, he admitted, a rare, genuine grin spreading across his face. Walking past the entire Harrington clan without shaking a single hand and stealing the foundation from under their noses? That was highly satisfying from a tactical perspective. We needed the foundation's assets to fund your broader vision anyway. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was a continuing source of vindication. The story wasn't just local. It hit the financial news with a vengeance. Tech mogul transfers $25 million foundation to young fiancé, screamed the headlines. The emphasis wasn't on Elias's power, but on my sudden, irrefutable ascendancy. My father's firm lost the development deal entirely. Not because of Elias, but because Mr. Davies, in his terrified scramble to align with Nexus Global, pulled out of the old infrastructure contracts, causing a domino effect that left my father financially exposed and professionally ostracized. Samantha and Aunt Carol became instant local pariahs. The gossip wasn't whispered. It was digital, amplified by the Foundation's entire volunteer base, who had always resented the family's self-serving, shallow leadership. Samantha was fired from her unpaid gala organizer position and even lost her slot on the local parent-teacher association board. Her marriage to Mark, which was already fragile, crumbled under the dual pressure of financial loss and social humiliation. Mark left, citing her toxic family drama as the reason for divorce. I received a single final email from Samantha, sent from a generic address 3 months after the reunion. It wasn't an apology. It was a single sentence. "I heard you're shutting down the coastal cleanup program to focus on the global initiative. Is that true?" I replied via Simone's office, directing her to the Vance Foundation's newly launched website. The Foundation's first official act was a $5 million grant to fully fund the coastal cleanup program for the next 5 years, the program Samantha had accused me of neglecting. The message was implicit. I shut down the Foundation's bureaucracy, but amplified the purpose. I spent the next 2 years building the Vance Foundation for Disruptive Altruism into a global force, all while balancing my CEO duties at Nexus Global. My days were long, but every minute was spent on work that mattered, side by side with a partner who valued my mind more than any material possession. Elias and I married quietly in the prototype house, exchanging vows we had written ourselves, focused entirely on partnership, respect, and shared purpose. The ultimate reflection was simple. My family had spent a lifetime trying to minimize my life so they could feel bigger. They mistook my independence for loneliness, my focus for desperation, and my quiet ambition for failure. But the very qualities they scorned, my resilience, my intellect, and my quiet dedication to work, had armed me with the power to walk away from their table forever, and instead build a world where value was measured by impact, not by the approval of the people who once called me a failure. The laughter they shared at the reunion was the most expensive sound they ever made, costing them not only their pride, but their entire social standing, which now belonged to the woman they had mocked.